Thank you, Molly. I'm so grateful. All my love, J.G.
Dear Molly, I used to see the world in shades of gray. You helped me to see the colors of nature and beyond. I used to fear that others would reject me. You helped me to accept myself. I used to think my longing for connection was small. You helped me see the infinite nature of my heart. I used to think that what I could see with my eyes was all that existed for me in this world. You helped me understand the vastness of a universe that embraces me as a sister, brother, lover, mother, father, child, teacher, student, and friend. Thank you for answering my prayers with grace and gratitude, Scout.
Dear Molly, after 16 years of severe childhood abuse and neglect, I felt nothing much but shame, isolation, and constant terror. Having PTSD was extremely disabling, and I do not think that I could handle living like that anymore. You showed me that I have the capacity to feel truly happy and content. For the first time in my life, you made me feel completely held, safe, and loved. You allowed me to drop my fear and allowed my heart to really see and connect with others, and for them to really see me. For all these realizations and capacities are carried on and deepened in my daily life. I finally feel like I am myself because I love and accept myself fully, and now I can fulfill my purpose in life to help others. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you, but you already knew that. A.
Dear Molly, you taught me how to dance. I was a dancer my whole life, but it used to be about the steps, about the performance, doing things that looked good. You taught me to let go of everything I had ever learned and fully feel the music. Let the music move through me instead of trying to make something happen. I still feel you with me every time I dance, even after our paths have diverged. Thank you, Molly. Much love.
Welcome to the Lover's Day event, I Heart MDMA. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of Medicinal Mindfulness, my name's Molly. That's right. It's all here, sweet bliss, ecstasy, and an open heart in the flesh. But enough about me, however. We all joined here today to celebrate the sweet and ecstatic substance, also known as Molly, MDMA. As a consciousness community, Medicinal Mindfulness seeks to bring people together with a safe and legal conversation around psychedelics and the profound healing and transformative power of altered states of consciousness. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the lovely Allison McQueen. She's an internationally trained art therapist, psychotherapist, and somatic trauma specialist. She's the executive director of Aspen Roots Counseling, co-founder of Medicinal Mindfulness, and worked as sub-investigator and research therapist for the FDA-approved clinical trials treating post-traumatic stress disorder with MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. Her talk today is titled MDMA, It's Criminal That This Is Illegal. Please welcome Allison McQueen.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for being here, and thanks to Mark and James for sharing their stories. It's amazing to see that film. It gets to me every single time, actually. So my intention today is to shed some light on why MDMA is such an important therapeutic tool. My talk today is divided into 4 sections. What the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD looked like in the FDA-approved clinical research context I was involved in, what kind of preliminary results we're seeing, why it's criminal that this is illegal, and what it's like sitting in the therapist's seat. I realize I'm preaching to the choir, but I do have to define MDMA. I still can't pronounce it, but MDMA. It's the active ingredient in what is more commonly known as ecstasy or Molly. It's a synthetic compound widely recognized for its ability to decrease fear and defensiveness while increasing trust and empathy. It opens a window of tolerance in patients undergoing psychotherapy for PTSD, and it holds that window open long enough for them to step through that which is challenging for them. MDMA makes it easier for patients to be comfortable between the extremes of fear and avoidance, and may increase the effectiveness of psychotherapy by strengthening the alliance between therapist and client. MDMA promotes the release of oxytocin and prolactin, hormones associated with trust and bonding, helping patients discuss painful memories openly and honestly. All right, so what the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy actually looks like. Our research study was treating clients with significant and treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder. That means they had tried multiple other treatments and it wasn't working. They weren't getting better, or they weren't getting better enough to function, have a normal job, healthy relationships, just have a regular life like everybody wants, right? And the clients that went through this study were supported by a male-female therapist team. So there were 2 therapists per client. We would meet with them for 3 non-drug talk therapy sessions in preparation for the first MDMA session. And then we'd have an 8-hour session under the influence of MDMA. Then there'd be 3 non-drug integrative sessions after that, which would be a time for them to remember and process the experience. We'd go through that cycle 3 times. So the MDMA sessions, the prep sessions, the MDMA sessions, and integratives, they would eventually have 3 MDMA sessions. On the day of the MDMA-assisted session, the psychiatrist would come in the morning, unlock a safe, and take out a randomized pill. It was a double blind, so the therapist didn't know, the client didn't know if they were getting a low dose or the full dose. We're experimenting with different doses, right? So if it's the full dose, they get 125 milligrams. And then an hour and a half later, an optional supplemental dose of half that, 62.5. And they spend 8 hours in a room with the 2 therapists processing their experience while under the influence of MDMA. This is clinical research, but it's not like we're in a lab. It's a comfortable office with a nice couch. There's art on the wall and fresh flowers. I always liked that part, getting the flowers the morning of their big day, picking out something that they were going to kind of have as a focal point on the table. And the therapists would facilitate this 8-hour session. So we'd be monitoring some of the physical stuff going on, temperature, blood pressure, keeping them comfortable. There's music playing in the background, and they go in and out from relational therapy to quiet internal time. So they may have, up to like a full hour of having eye shades on, listening to music, and then coming out of that talking about what memories are surfacing or how they're feeling. There are often feelings coming up that are being felt for the first time. A lot of repressed memories tend to surface. So with that comes the grief part of the process, right? It's as much grief work as it is trauma work, because as they begin to associate instead of dissociate, they're remembering more and more of what happened during the trauma, during their childhood, whenever it was, right? Or if it was multiple events. And then there's inevitably the grief that comes with that, the fact that that's been a part of their life. What the MDMA does is it lifts the lid on all the years of memories, right? All of the feelings that have been stored in the body for all that time. But it's simultaneously supporting them in feeling, in remembering, in associating versus dissociating. There's a lot of somatic body processing going on, a lot of physical discharge, often shaking or trembling, crying, and maybe even periods of just full-on body freezing up in response to the material. Sorry. I have to breathe or I'll speed up too much. So they're processing all of this material, right? But unlike the first time when they experience the trauma, they're in a safe room, they're with safe people, and the MDMA is helping them to reorganize, and process the experience on a cellular level. The MDMA provides a sort of psychic cushion around everything. One client I worked with described it as, you're going through this awful trauma, quote, but it's also all wrapped in rainbows. So that's the window of tolerance. It opens up that window of tolerance. You can stay with it long enough to actually work through it. One of my co-therapists, Jim Grigsby, refers to the consolidation of memories, which is what we think is what's happening with the MDMA. It's filing the past into the past, so the past isn't running the show in the present moment anymore. This is what recovery from PTSD is all about, is catching up to the present moment. Trauma is a full body response, It's a permanent state of activation where the fear and intensity of the original experience gets wedged into the nervous system of the present moment. That changes their personality, their ability to work and engage with others, to be in relationship. And it makes it so that even simple things, right, like getting groceries is completely full of triggers. You heard me mention in the documentary the 75% drop in PTSD symptoms. These are the kinds of numbers that we're seeing, though there's quite a range. The data for the Boulder study is still early. We won't have solid numbers until all 23 participants complete a 12-month follow-up. So we really want to see, obviously want to see them get better right away, but we want to make sure it sticks. So 12 months out, we're still collecting the data on that. But this shows you what we've got so far. It's looking really good. It shows the percentage of subjects who had a clinically significant decrease in symptom severity. As you can see, a year after treatment, over 80% of participants had a huge drop in PTSD symptoms. 80% of people are getting a lot better, right? And you can see that it's 2 months and then a year after, right? So there's that initial drop and then another drop in symptoms as the treatment integrates into their lives. It's a huge process that they go through, uncovering deep trauma and repressed memories. It takes a while to integrate. They may actually feel worse before they feel better, but overall seem to be accessing a feeling of wholeness that wasn't there before. What I saw again and again with my clients is that they were coming back to life. They were becoming more present, having a more solid sense of self, developing healthy boundaries. And all the rules change. So the way they engage with work, the way they engage with their loved ones, all of these situations start to change drastically as they have a better sense of themselves and clearer boundaries about what they need. The integration takes quite a while, needs a lot of support. The MDMA causes a lot of internal shifts immediately, right? But then they have to catch up the rest of their life to all of those changes. Everyone around them has to catch up to the fact that they've transformed so quickly. So for anyone in the room not like me, not into charts and numbers, I'm going to show you an art assessment, which is another way of understanding the transformation people have gone through. I'm an art therapist and did a few art assessments, so we have images to tell the stories of what's happening for these folks. The one I'm going to show you is from a series out of the Diagnostic Drawing Series, Art Assessment. It looks at several images with particular drawing directives. For this one, the instructions are very simple. It's draw a picture of a tree. And the research behind it shows that this particular directive invites people to make a self-symbol as represented through the tree. All right, so this is the pre-MDMA, before having MDMA sessions. So when you're looking at the tree, see this as the person that we're speaking about, right? There's this barely there tree. You can hardly see it, right? So that's how this person felt. They're barely there. You can hardly see them. There's no ground to stand on, no foundation, no roots, and nowhere for roots to go anyway. And there's a vacancy, a blankness, an emptiness. This is what the client felt like initially. They felt very far away. So let's look a few months later. Same person, same drawing directive. There's color, right? There's vibrancy. It actually got filled in a bit. There's some detail and substance. There's growth. The beginnings of roots and a ground to stand on. There's a sun. And look inside the tree, there's a hole. There's actually room for someone to live in there, right? I blocked the name, but they signed their name too. It's a way of saying, this is me, I'm here, right? It's in big, bold letters. And they dated it too. So again, that catching up to the current moment, right? Okay, it's 2016 now. It's not whatever year it was of the trauma, right? So you can see them together. So we know the treatment is safe. We've proven that. We know it's effective. We've proven that. We know people do not get worse because of it. We know they actually get a lot better. And it's illegal. So that's why I've titled my talk, It's Criminal That This Is Illegal. I've worked with people who have been suicidal for years, decades even, and now they're not after the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. Definitely saved my clients' lives, and it could save a lot more lives. Think about the vets. Is it 22 a day committing suicide? We can save a lot of vets. And as a therapist, I'd be breaking the law if I offered this to my clients to save their lives. So imagine if we had a team of doctors that created the cure for a particular kind of cancer. PTSD is kind of like a contagious cancer in our culture, right? And this team of doctors keeps it from their patients, doesn't make it accessible, doesn't make it affordable, isn't even an option, right? This is the kind of thing that's happening with MDMA right now. Meanwhile, the kinds of over-the-counter drugs that are legal, that have really shady side effects, may or may not help somebody, that's allowed. But MDMA, which is an actual miracle, you can see it right here, right? It's a miracle that exists, and it's being blocked. Our world is falling apart. I'm bringing kids into this world that is so traumatized it can't see straight, and MDMA can change that, so let's figure out a way to decriminalize it. I don't have time today to get into the complexities of that illegality, the socioeconomic reasons, the political reasons, the war on drugs. Although I hope somebody will give that talk at Shine. Please apply to that. It's another issue for another day, but I will say this. My dad is a retired police officer. I'm a cop's daughter and a psychedelic researcher, right? I grew up in the Just Say No. I was actually proud to be a DARE graduate in 5th grade. And I know. I'm sorry. I was really proud of it. So I get the psychology behind law enforcement, right? The reasons for the law itself, I do have a lot of respect for both. And my dad is a perfect example because it's not that he doesn't want people with PTSD to get better. Think about how many of his cop friends have PTSD from being on the force, right? So it's not that he's not on board with the same goal the rest of us have. It's that the whole concept of a psychedelic being a catalyst for healing is so outside the box. It's so off his radar that it's completely unimaginable, right? Remember, there's a lot of cultural trauma before my generation, right? A lot of trauma from the 60s and the whole psychedelic revolution. A lot of trauma from unconfined, altered states experiences. It was like wildfire. And with my dad and a lot of others who represent law enforcement, so the DEA, the lawmakers behind prohibition, it starts with education, of course, like anything. And the role of having actual conversations about this research, the benefit of this kind of thing, that's huge. So in this moment, I'm actually feeling really hopeful because there's more and more research happening. There's more and more media coverage, mainstream media coverage too, right? The kind of stuff that actually makes its way to a more mainstream consciousness. So I think there's hope. That's also one of the reasons for Shine, right? So that we can have ongoing community dialogue about this work. So we've talked about the clients and what happens for them, right? It's a miracle. I also want to share what it's like sitting in the therapist's seat because it is a shared experience. We go through it together. And what I've seen since getting involved in the research is that there are so many therapists interested in this work, really hungry for it. So there's something in it for the healers too, right? Something that we're drawn to. This is why we created Psychedelic Sitters School in the first place, because there's just so much passion and so much hunger for this work. I get contacted from professionals and young people all over the country wanting to get involved, right? So I'm going to share a bit about what it was like for me. I'm only one of the therapists involved, right? So I'm not speaking for everybody, but what it was for me. So by far, it was the most heartbreaking, heart-opening, heartwarming work I've ever done, and it impacted me on every level. Working with this severity of trauma is no easy task. I was working with people who had survived combat trauma, torture, and early childhood sexual abuse. Yeah. I was hearing about things that I truly deep in my bones didn't know was possible for humans to experience. I knew it on some cognitive level, but deep in my bones had no idea that it was possible. And simultaneously, while I was processing the depths of those wounds, the wounds of the world, right, at the very same moment I was seeing the resiliency of the human spirit as well. That's what rocked me to the core more than anything. To know what a person has been through, to see them not only surviving, but growing past the trauma, shining in spite of it, being good people, being good parents anyways. It gave me a massive dose of hope and faith in the human spirit. To see their genuineness, their kindness, the vulnerability, and warrior strength in these people, in spite of everything, made me think that anything is possible. And the MDMA helped them to shine. Why do you think we call this event Shine? This is what happens in people, right? I wish I could show you before and after photos. You see their faces completely transform. The color comes back, their vibrancy comes back, they're more confident in their bodies, their whole posture changes, almost looks like a completely different person. And so the process of going through this treatment helped reveal the beauty that they already were. It's not that we're changing them, making them a different person. It's just letting them return to who they've always been. MDMA basically just helps people to be themselves. We're good. Okay. So another thing about being in the therapist seat, I definitely felt the contact high, being exposed to someone being on the medicine, right? There was an amped up awareness of my body, a lot of felt sense, a lot of sensation information coming in, and all emotions were felt more fully because it kind of turned up the volume on everything. And I had a lot of countertransference coming in, meaning how I feel in the presence of this person and what that tells me about their experience. So it's the ultimate training program for therapists, to sit with somebody for 8 hours through such a deep process, and to stay in contact with them, with the stories, to stay in contact with my own body without checking out. So you're simultaneously staying in contact with the trauma stuff, but more importantly, you're also seeing and tracking their beauty, their wisdom, their resilience, and really opening to that, really letting yourself see the gift that is them as well. That's a huge part of the healing, actually. How do I want to say it? Basically, I let myself love my clients a lot, and it's a huge part of it. So, hope that makes sense. All right, resourcing. All right, resourcing is huge in this work, absolutely essential for trauma healing. Resourcing is the act of taking inventory of the tools, resources, and supports that you have available to help you. There are external resources like your loved ones, communities you're a part of, or places in nature. And there are internal resources like a sense of self-confidence, knowing you've gotten through challenges in the past, having a sense of humor. And just knowing what your resources are is calming to your nervous system, particularly if you let the resources register on a somatic level, so feeling it in your body. What happens in your body when you imagine or remember that these resources are in your life? There are multiple resourcing practices you can cultivate as well, mindfulness tools, ways of breathing, ways of calming your own system in the moment. I did a lot of resourcing with the client and with myself throughout these MDMA sessions because they're so long, right? 8 hours, you better be ready. I did a lot of grounding to help stay calm and to stay attuned with the client and connected no matter what was happening. We'll get more into this in Sitter School in a few weeks, how the therapist stays connected to herself and how that helps the client. There's a lot involved in that, and it's absolutely crucial if you're interested in this work. We do a ton of resourcing for our clients, and the MDMA is a big resource too, but the therapist has to be doing it as well. And I think it's actually harmful to get into this work without knowing how to resource, particularly if you're highly energetically sensitive or empathic. And what the client needs more than anything is for the therapist to be connected, resourced, not dissociated. The therapist serves as the secondary nervous system for the client. So the gift for me in being involved in this work is it forced me to get really good at resourcing, really good at self-care. Because it's the field that you're entering into is so big, the bigness of this work, and that it is a shared experience. You're riding the waves with them. And because we don't want to burn out, we want to be able to do the work. We want to really be with our clients, fully present with them, we have to master the skills related to grounding ourselves energetically. So all the resourcing stuff I was doing in session, I'm doing it right now. Constantly grounding and breathing, connecting, staying present so I can really be with you. I had a lot of incentive around this one because I had a 6-month-old baby when I started with the study. So I was spending the day immersed in altered states work, immersed in trauma resolution work, and then coming home to nurse the baby. So all of the experiences, all the stories I entered into with my clients to help them heal, all of that was present with me when I returned home to some degree, right, without me telling the stories. So how could I not be sharing some of this with my daughter on some energetic level? It would be impossible to not be deeply moved by these experiences. And what we learn in somatic trauma healing work is to allow the memories to pass through us and not suppress them, to not let them get stuck in our bodies. So how do you do this while you're nursing a child? So I would hear the stories and the images of them, right? And the way I would picture them as they were told to me. And then they would later in the day be washing over me as I was connected to my kid. So she was in the depths of it too, right? Not the trauma exactly, but the resolution of trauma. That's what she's being exposed to. So we both together learned how to run that energy and how to transform it in the present moment. The gift of that was being in a field of resilience with my child. We both got a dose of that resilience of the human spirit, right? I did a lot of practices around that, the grounding, the clearing, the attunement, refreshing my energy, all of that. There were a whole bunch of practices. I'm going to share one of them I did, and then we'll get into the rest in Sitter's School. But this is a practice called response art. It's a way of discharging energy onto art materials rather than holding it in my body. It's something art therapists often do after working with a client, so that once the client has left the room, we have time to contemplate our time with them, and the art gives us a lot of information about the work that's happening. It helps gives us insight and understand what's going on a deeper level with the client. All right. So this is me at the end of an MDMA day. It was a really hard day, a really big one, an amazing one, but hard. And I really didn't know what to do with it. So I turned to art. So the kind of reddish pink image there, that's the client as I pictured them in that moment. This is how they felt like to me, right? And then the black part that comes out of the center, that's me working with the trauma, the darkness, how it went all the way back for them, all the way through their life, from the center, from their core, from the very beginning of their life, it was there, very dark. So I did the black first. I was processing a lot of hopelessness, wondering if someone would be able to recover from something like that. Really wondering if maybe some people don't get better. Maybe it's too hard, maybe it's too dark. So that's the countertransference piece, right? I was left feeling the way the client feels, utterly hopeless. It doesn't mean I have to buy into the hopelessness or believe it. It means I have to feel it because they do. So I was immersed in it and had to look at that, had to name it and process it, and the response art helped a lot with that. It helped me get really honest with myself about the hopelessness and the hope, and then I let myself work through it on the image level and just let the art talk. So eventually it switched, and I don't remember how or when, but then I wasn't working with black anymore. I was working with white that also came out of that core. Spins out, actually, I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but the white actually seems to originate before the black, which is amazing. I didn't plan that, right? It's just, this is what happens when you make art. So this is the essence of the work, right, and how it worked me as a therapist, working with dark and light, working with good and bad, and trauma and healing. There's this bright light beneath it all, and we can uncover that. You all know there are millions of tools out there to uncover that light. I'm a yes to all of them, right? Mindfulness, EMDR, art therapy, dance therapy, any of it. I'm a yes to all of those modalities, but I've learned enough about these different modalities to know that MDMA-assisted psychotherapy is special. So in closing, MDMA can help people be themselves in the world. It can help them heal, and it can do it deeper and faster than most other therapeutic modalities. Given the state of our world, I don't think we have time for everyone to do 10 years of therapy or to take a few years off to meditate. I'd rather people take MDMA. Thank you. Okay.